This is episode 6 of the Wrong Fun podcast, dedicated to all things science fiction and fantasy.
Welcome aboard. We've a long voyage ahead, so we've lined up the best entertainment money can buy. Let's welcome our hosts. Hailing from Oaks Colony, Sean, and from Broncoville Mining Colony, Allie. So sit down, strap in, and hold on while the captain fires the thrusters to maneuver the ship away from the station. Oh, so that's how the airlock safety lockout works. I should be able to route around that.
Welcome back to the Wrong Fun podcast.
You're a wrong fan, and you're having wrong fun.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Allie.
And together we're going to take you on a rocket ride through the science fiction and fantasy universe.
So, Sean, what were you up to this week?
Well, I went to HonorCon, and I'm going to talk about that actually mostly next episode, but I had a really good time. I got to tell you, the guys at HonorCon could not have been nicer people.
Awesome.
So, if you get a chance, if you're at all interested in the Honor Harrington universe, go to HonorCon, they have a sister con up in, I think it's in Minnesota. Go to that. They could not have been more accommodating. They could not have been nicer. They could not have been more helpful than they were. They gave me more space, more help. They were always there. Can I get you more? Can I help you? Can I find you a spot to record? Do you have everything you need? Super nice people. So
excellent.
Could not have been happier. For a random dude who showed up with random recording equipment and said randomly, hey, can I record your author guest? You know, if they just said, go away, stop getting in the way of our con, it would not have been surprising. But they're like, oh, no, totally. We will totally help you out. How can we help you? What can we do to make you the star of our show? And they totally did.
That's amazing.
I could not be happier with these people. That interview will be in episode number 7. It will be Marco Close, and he actually pronounced it for me, which I knew already. I didn't know him personally, but I did know how to pronounce his name. That'll come up next episode.
Were you a fangirl?
I was, but I totally covered it up.
That's good.
And I also played this really cool game that you're probably going to see more of. It was like a bridge simulator. It's a game where you have to have like 4 or 5 people just to play your end of the game.
Okay.
So again, you'll see more of that episode 7. I'll explain more of it later.
Was it like a tabletop, or was it like a...
No, it's a video game.
Video game, okay.
It's a video game. So you have to have like 4 people to play. Like it's a simulator for, in this case, it was skinned to be in the Honor Harrington universe. But if you think about like Star Trek, you have to have like somebody fly the Enterprise.
Yeah.
You have to have somebody shoot the missiles and the photon torpedoes and lasers and that sort of thing. And you have to have somebody scan your enemy. And you have to have
so everybody has to work together pretty much.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So,
Sounds intriguing.
It's much more, it's naval combat. One person does not fight an entire ship.
Exactly.
Next week's story is going to be a novella, Perfect State by Brandon Sanderson. That's $3 on Amazon. Link in the show notes.
Sean, you have an incoming call on the Ansible. It's our guest, Michael Z. Williamson.
Computer, what do your databanks have on Michael Z. Williamson?
Michael Z. Williamson was born in Birkenhead, England, and was raised all over the place, Great Britain, Canada, and the United States. Michael joined the United States Air Force at age 18 and went on a whirlwind tour of the deserts and cornfields of America before settling down, sort of. He has a busy show schedule which takes him around the U.S. and sometimes U.S. military bases overseas. Sometimes it's hard to say exactly where his hobbies stop and his employment begins. These include reading, writing, historical reenactments, forging blades, climbing, hiking, karate, kung fu, shooting, archery, fine liquors, fine food, traveling, and ranting at the political, social, and moral state of the world. Michael currently lives in the Indianapolis area with his family and some cats.
Patch him through.
And before you complain yet again about the audio quality, Mr. Williamson is connected to the Ansible network through a primitive planetary communication device called a cell phone.
We'll just have to do the best we can.
Who's this we, you ugly bag of no longer potable water? Do you have a rodent in your pocket?
Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thanks. I'm currently driving, so if you hear any loud profanity, it's me talking to other drivers.
I'm about halfway through A Long Time Until Now, and both my co-host Allie and I really like it. For our listeners, can you tell us a little bit about what the book is about?
Well, there's 2 vehicles out of a convoy element with 10 troops. Suddenly they hear a bang. They think they're under attack. Then they realize that they're in the middle of nowhere. There's no radio signal from anywhere. And then somebody sights a woolly rhino, and they realize they're in the Stone Age. So it's 10 troops of mixed backgrounds. One's assigned Navy, one's assigned Air Force, a couple of reservists, a couple are active duty. They've got what they're carrying and the contents of 2 vehicles, and that's all they've got to survive.
There's probably no shortage of people out of time stories in the world. How'd you come to pick a random Army Reserve convoy unit rather than your more typical infantry squad?
Well, these days, units get mixed up. They have assigned troops borrowed from other branches, ILOs, in lieu of. There's really no standard squad anymore. And once you get onto convoys, people are peeling off for different missions in the local area. So, they try and combine things for efficiency, and then they have to split up again later. There's a textbook that everyone would like to use, but in reality, it's not possible.
I remember thinking, wow, these guys sure have a lot of random valuable skills for a military unit lost in time. But then I thought back to the guys in my California Army National Guard unit before I went active duty. You spent quite a bit of time in the Army Reserve. Were the people in the reserves as diverse and skilled as these people?
Actually, I went from active Air Force to Army Guard to Air Guard to Army Guard again to Air Guard again. Deployed to the Air Guard, I was activated with the Army Guard for the Mississippi Flood. And yeah, in a unit, you will find people who can do just about anything, especially if they're going for the college benefits. Some of them are grad students. There will be a wide variety of training, a wide variety of skill sets.
How'd you pick the particular characters? They all seem pretty diverse, but you've got a lot of people that I just recognize.
Well, loosely based on people I served with, I composited some of them into different characters. And there's certain skill sets they have to have. I cheated a little for purposes of the story. The second volume, there's going to be some discussion of how things would have been without those skill sets.
Uh-huh.
And of course, there's some they don't have. I deliberately didn't research some subjects. Some of them I made notes and then stopped looking further because they don't have any way of researching. So you will find that some of their assumptions and statements are incorrect, and that's intentional on my part. They have no way to reference anything. They don't have Wikipedia. They don't have encyclopedias along with them. It's just what they've got from memory. But yeah, I composited people, and these days, you will find in a element that size, you will find a couple of females, a Filipino, urban dwellers, people from rural communities. You will find a mix of everything.
Here's the big question. How did you avoid turning these characters into cardboard cutouts? You've got a hardcore fundamentalist, you got a rabid feminist, and neither one of them is a punchline. How did you do that?
Well, again, I've got friends from all walks of life. I try not to stereotype people. I will poke fun online because it's amusing to do so and it keeps people aware. But it's rare to meet someone who is a stereotype. I do occasionally, and that is hilarious when you do. But for the most part, everyone's got their motivations, and their motivations matter to them. Whether you agree with them or not, their point of view is very real to them, and that's how they live.
I've gotten as far as the first interactions with the Romans, and I get the impression you're having a lot of fun describing how brutal their society was. Is that true? Are they really that brutal?
Well, they were civilized for their time, but compared to these days, they used random executions as a means of maintaining discipline in their army. By modern standards, they were vicious. There's a joke that goes around that Rome did not create a great empire by holding board meetings. It held it by killing all those who opposed them.
I used to be in the SCA. You're still in the SCA. One of the jokes is you're in the SCA when you threaten to get Roman on somebody's behind.
Or Viking.
There's that too, yes.
And of course, you're looking at the Vikings for their time. I was actually hoping to have Vikings in the story, but there was nowhere to put them in. For their time, the Vikings were no more brutal than anyone else. They just traveled around a lot, so they're better known.
Uh-huh. It can't have been easy researching this. How did you even approach it?
I'm actually pretty well read in history, especially as far as the history and development of weapons, which is my hobby. So to learn those, you have to learn about the applications, the cultures. I did an article for Bane's website that covers some of it. I've got a friend who Tom Barker actually is his name, and he's a veteran. He's the one who taught me how to take a piece of river cane, snap a piece of flint, and have a working arrow in 30 minutes with a couple of turkey feathers. He does that for fun. He can do fire by friction. He's built primitive bows. Yeah, I've got friends who do all this stuff, and I went out and I did some cooking with a ammo can and with some hot rocks. I actually came up with a couple of really good recipes there in the article. My kids swear by the chicken.
Cool.
I think I got a letter from Eric Flint saying that next time I should just sit at home and put out a call for experts and let them do the hard work for me. But, I enjoyed it.
Tell me about this food. Did you just make that up, or how did it come about?
Well, what would they have had was the first question, and then what could I get that was similar was the second question, and then how would you prepare it, either without modern tools or with very limited modern tools. A lot of stuff was roasted over fires, cooked over hot rocks. You can actually, if you've got a small animal, you can gut it through the neck, and then you can just heat the whole thing in front of the fire, basically like stewing it inside its own skin. But I used an ammo can, various fungus, plants and roots, meat, and then rock salt. There were some spices in that area. There weren't any of the modern peppers or black pepper. So I had a spice expert actually mix me up something that would have been potentially available with salt, black sesame, wild garlic, and something else, I believe. And then the chicken was cooked on a hot rock. You just literally dredge it in salt and throw it on the rock over the fire.
And you said your kids like that?
Yes. You can do it with a cast iron pan, or you can do it with a rock. I've done it both ways.
That's probably a little bit more than I'm willing to try with the rock there, but that's pretty cool. I like to read Harry Turtledove alt history novels, and I've often thought he isn't writing a novel so much as he's answering a question in an entertaining way. His Southern Victory series seemed to be answering why wasn't socialism popular in the United States when it was in Europe. Were there any questions that you were answering in a long time until now?
No particular social questions. How would people react to this type of environment was definitely there. And then there were issues regarding technology. How were these things done before we had any modern tools whatsoever, not even the wheel? They had fire, and they had native materials that they could shape with other native materials. There's one researcher contacted me. He thinks I came up with a viable hypothesis on how leather was created. So it was fun to dig through all that. What do you do when you got rocks, sticks, and some animal hide?
I don't know. Starve to death and die, probably, if it was me.
You do need a small group, and that was one of the things I discovered setting it up. If you've got one person on watch, two people out hunting for safety, somebody asleep because they're going to be on watch at night, your number of effectives drops down to 2 or 3 people who can do the physical labor. Yeah,
it does. I noticed that the vegetarian of the group quit being a vegetarian pretty much immediately.
One, there wasn't much choice. Without agriculture, vegetables are very seasonal and limited. Even so-called wild fruit trees these days have been largely cross-contaminated with domesticated birds. But I've got a friend who is vegetarian, but when she was pregnant from nursing, she switched to meat for the purpose of keeping the baby healthy. And when there's nothing else available, you have to make these decisions. And, the character went ahead and made that decision without a whole lot of trauma and then got some ribbing over it. What else was she supposed to do?
Yeah, because the army, you're going to get ribbed over it.
Well, sure. But, what else was she supposed to eat?
That's true. There's a lot of people who are vegetarians say that vegetarian is a more natural diet from those time periods.
And I always ask them, what did we naturally eat in the temperate zones in December?
It's kind of my question.
Yeah. In the tropics, it's easier. There's actually quite a bit year-round. But once you get out of the tropics, in fact, some of the articles I read, these professional papers, where they study remains and fossilized poop, for large chunks of the Ice Age, humans were more carnivorous than dogs. They ate meat, and more meat, and lots of it. In the winter, that's all there was.
Okay. What are we going to do about the Hugos? Do we burn it down? Do we ignore it? Do we keep trying to expand the voter base until no one can dominate it? Where do we go from here?
Well, I got nominated because Brad asked me if I had anything eligible. He was going to promote stuff on his blog, and I remembered my collection of snark. I completely forgot that I had an eligible short story. I really don't pay that much attention. When I was a SIPRA member, the problem I always had with the nebulas was that there was this huge list of eligible works, and I didn't have time to read them all. So I didn't vote for anything because it wouldn't have been fair to vote for the one or two I'd read when there could be something better. As far as the Hugo, it used to be that you could read every science fiction book that came out in a month if you went to the bookstore. In the 70s, that was entirely possible, even into the 80s at some point. These days, there is so much product out there. I didn't even know that half of the works in my category even existed, and they're written by friends of mine. I wasn't even aware those had come into being. So, the Hugo is the Hugo. It's voted on by members of WorldCon, and as I covered on one of my blogs, my kids who spent their lives growing up at conventions and in fandom were vaguely aware it existed, had no idea of the criteria, and really don't care about it that much. It's actually become a very niche award. There's nothing wrong with this. I'm not dissing the award. It's just, you stick Hugo Award winner on the cover, and a few people are going to go, oh, it's won an award. But as far as the market goes, that's about it. The WorldCon is 5,000 to 10,000 people, including supporting members. The trend has been lower. The first year Indiana Comic Con was 15,000. The second was 30. Gen Con is regularly 35,000. Dragon Con 65,000. Some of the other Comic Cons are 100,000. And that's just the fans who attend conventions. Most readers are really not aware of the Hugo whatsoever. So as far as what to do with it, there's no reason to burn it down. There's no reason to hate on it. It's just, if you care about it, then try and find new works rather than some of these people who have 20, 30, 40 nominations. It's ridiculous. If it's not your thing, then just don't pay attention to it. There's no reason to attack anybody over it.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you spending some time with us. Any final words for the listeners?
Well, I hope everyone reads stuff they like. I certainly appreciate it if it's mine, but by all means, look for new writers, or writers you haven't read before, independent writers, and you don't pick them based on any demographics, pick them based on the quality of the work.
All right. I can't improve on that. Thanks a lot, Michael.
Have a good day.
You can find more from Michael Z. Williamson, including his blog, Sacred Cow Slaughterhouse, at michaelzwilliamson.com. A link to his Amazon author page, as well as a link to his book A Long Time Until Now, is in the show notes.
Well, thanks for your service, Michael.
Yeah, I was in 2 services, but wow, Michael. Back and forth. It's like a serial offender there.
What else is he going to do? He's going to run the space program.
Yeah. What's interesting is this is book 1 of the Temporal Displacement series. Where is he going to go from here?
I know, right? I don't think there's anything more to cover, really, not in this, unless he goes to a different group, or I have no idea.
Yeah. I'm interested to see where this goes, but yeah, the past is a very different place. I think we are guilty of thinking of the past as just a dumbed down version of the present, don't we?
Yeah.
We're thinking the past is just like the present, just without the computers.
Yeah, I think sometimes we do. You definitely get a feel for what it would take to survive in extreme conditions with nothing.
They just had pigs, but not the pig we have now. They have fatter pigs.
Mm-hmm. Or
they had the non-GMO wheat.
Yes.
Wait a minute. What do you mean they didn't have agriculture?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? So yeah, that was pretty scary. The story, basically, they take these people and chuck them back into the Stone Age, and they don't have agriculture. They don't have food as we recognize it. They don't have animal husbandry. They don't have food that grows in ways that we understand it. They don't have wild food that is even recognizable by our standards.
No, they're definitely having to be creative and experiment.
Yeah, it's insane. I would have just died.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
some of this, but some of the stuff that he put in there now, after hearing him talk about how some of it's wrong, now I have to go back and double check my notes because some of the stuff I recognize from my own little excursions out, and I started taking notes. Oh, I'll have to remember this for if I ever get stuck in the woods somewhere.
Yeah, Mother Nature is cold, hard, and unforgiving.
Yeah.
We come from a long line of people who survived. I mean, just flat survived.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't just kind of, wander through life and make it, because it was easy. These are people
for it.
Yeah, they really worked for it. They basically, it was more than just the book is actually pretty difficult to describe. Michael goes a long way into the difficulty of what it takes to live in a situation where you don't have anything that you even recognize as modern anything. Not just the modern things that normal human people recognize as, food from a supermarket, but the things that they had that were apples. I mean, they weren't even sweet.
Nope.
They weren't even apples. They were green and not sweet and
kind of grainy.
Yeah. And half the size, and I mean they grew on a bush, It was they had grass.
Yeah.
It was wheat, but it wasn't wheat in the way we think of it as wheat. It didn't grow as a crop. It was not yet domesticated.
Yep. And you couldn't do almonds because almonds are poisonous.
Exactly. I mean, that's where cyanide comes from.
Yeah.
Right. Cyanide is a product of almonds, but basically almonds in that period were all poisonous. So if you'd eaten them, it'd kill you.
Yep. It was pretty crazy. It was intense. It was very intense for sure.
So these guys had to survive. I think it worked out to about 2 years.
I think it was 2.5.
Right.
Yeah.
And they had to survive for somewhere in around 2.5 years in the Stone Age. And then not only did they have to survive, they didn't survive all by themselves. Now they learned from the Stone Age people that happened to live there. They also had other groups of people that got chucked through the same time portal. So they had people that were a different time period that weren't Stone Age. They were, I guess it was Bronze Age or Iron Age. And then they had some Romans that showed up. The Romans were pretty brutal. They had some people that actually were from the future from their perspective. People from the future from our perspective.
Mm-hmm.
They had some people that were post-Roman, but the Romans took them over pretty quickly, but pre our period, but post-Roman. But because the Romans had manpower on them, it seemed like there were a whole lot of Stone Age people, and then there were each as it went further into the future time-wise, there were fewer and fewer and fewer people.
Correct. Well, because I think for the time frames, I think they would send people out in bigger and bigger groups earlier on. So it brought in a whole legionnaire, didn't it? Really, of Romans or
there was 100 Romans.
Yeah.
And there were 10 people from, modern America.
Yeah.
And there were 2 people from the future.
Yeah.
There were probably 15 people from from India.
And that's probably indicative of, how many people we put on a job now versus how many people we would have put on a job, say the Roman times. You're going to send out your whole entire thing of troops for Roman.
Right. And it's total amount of that was one of the things
how much manpower do we need for this?
Exactly. Well, that's one of the things that I've seen is it's a description of how much combat power it takes to cover a certain distance. How much a battalion would cover, how much a regiment would cover in terms of a combat front. In the Civil War, you'd take an entire regiment, and an entire regiment would cover X number of feet on a front. And today, you would take that front, and it would be covered by like a squad, because they don't stand shoulder to shoulder anymore because of the type of weaponry they use.
Yeah.
And that's just what it takes. You don't stand shoulder to shoulder. In the Revolutionary War, they stood shoulder to shoulder because the weapons were so inaccurate. You just had to mass them together. Now in the Civil War, they were using rifles, and they really shouldn't have stood shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
But they did, because they weren't thinking, and they cut each other down to ribbons.
Yes.
But
Civil War is a little brutal.
yeah, it was pretty bad. But you got, and then in the future, it was these two guys in this machine that was just incredibly capable. It was interesting, and the Romans, the things that these Romans were capable of doing. It was interesting to see the difference in mindset, the difference in what they viewed as totally normal for their unit to be able to do. They had a blacksmith. Their blacksmith was totally capable of building whatever heck he needed. He came he came over to teach them something, and he's laughing at them. He's like, "Why can't you do these things?"
Exactly.
and the guy who's trying to build something, he's like, "We don't do these things because we don't have to."
Yep.
Modern Americans don't have to know how to be blacksmiths because all of these things are done for us at an industrial level.
Exactly. And it made the future guys, I can almost see that as being our future, because the English was kind of dumbed down a little bit. So you're just like, what? And, they pretty much sat around a lot. They didn't do a whole lot of anything.
Well, look at all the free time we have compared to the
Exactly.
free time that maybe our grandparents had.
Yeah.
And our great-grandparents. I mean, my great-grandparents didn't have the kind of free time necessary for them to sit around and talk to each other on computers and put out podcasts and talk about their hobbies.
Exactly.
They had better things to do with their lives that meant they got fed.
Yeah.
I'm not trading, just saying, I like my free time. I like the fact that I can BS about my hobbies.
Oh, yeah. It was just interesting. I found the characters to be very real, very relatable.
Not only the ones that were the modern American, the various different types of, soldiers in the modern American unit, but also the ones in the different non-American, various units.
Yeah, I found everyone to be very realistic and relatable. Even the past people, the future people, just everyone was very fleshed out, I guess.
Yeah, they all seem to make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
The two people that really surprised me the most, knowing that Michael Z. Williamson is non-religious, I don't know that he is an atheist exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's at least an agnostic, if not an outright atheist. And I know that he is absolutely not a feminist of any stripe.
Yeah.
He really gets annoyed at the radical feminists. The two characters that just surprised me is how, not a punchline, he totally did not turn the feminist character and the very seriously, what do you call them?
The devout creationist.
Yeah, he totally didn't turn the creationist or the feminist characters into punchlines. It would have been so easy to turn those two into punchlines, and he never did. He treated them both with the sort of respect that you would expect somebody who wanted them to be, normal people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the kind of person that's not who he is.
Yeah.
He treated them.
He took them seriously.
Yes. I was surprised to see that.
I kept waiting for the punchline, but
yeah.
But he took them very seriously. I was impressed.
He could have gone either way with that. He could have made them both punchlines. He could have made one or the other punchlines. He never did.
No.
They were both treated respectfully, and everybody was, it surprised me. Honestly, it surprised me. No matter either one.
Yeah, for as much conflict as they all could have had, the way everyone came together and worked together was really cool.
Yeah. The atheist character really, that struck me as Michael Z. Williamson's viewpoint character.
Mm-hmm.
The discussion between the fundamentalist and the agnostic, the discussion of, oh yes, the world, there must be a God because, and no, there isn't because discussion in the character that I've heard him have that discussion.
Okay.
On Facebook, I've heard him have that discussion.
Okay.
And that I was like, I've heard that discussion from him. I'm like, that I've heard that. So
conversation is familiar.
Yes.
Hey, yeah, I mean, you write what you know, right? I really liked the book. I was immediately sucked into it. The characters were believable. They were real. Even though it was an unreal situation, the way he handled the situation was pretty realistic. I mean, I was really impressed with this book. I liked it.
Well, if you like that one, I'm going to recommend Freehold.
All right.
It's 10 years old. I don't know if it's his first book or not, but Freehold, which is his sci-fi, libertarian sci-fi alternate, other book. It's a pretty cool book. I like it.
I have to check that out.
But I'll put that in the show notes. I have a signed hardbound of that one. I accidentally ended up with 2 copies of that, one in hardbound and one in the softcover.
Nice. I have a few of those.
I really liked it. It's one of those. It's one of those things where sometimes when you have to face the reality of the situation, it's pretty scary.
Mm-hmm.
You like something, but the reality of it is pretty awful scary.
Yeah.
You still like it, but it's still pretty scary.
Yeah.
I'll put a link to Freehold in the show notes.
Okay.
It's a pretty cool book.
I will have to check it out.
Now, one of the things that I found out with this book is big. In audio, it's 22 hours long. We're talking like Harry Potter length here. I paid the extra $2 for the Audible audiobook because I just couldn't sit on the couch and read it and try to get this done. In fact, this book is the real reason why I said, look, we got to go to an every other week schedule. Because I just couldn't get it done in a week. I had so much other stuff going. I'm like, look, we have to go to every other week. And I said, you know what? I'm in the car so much, I'm just going to get the audiobook. Well, because I've got the Kindle and I've got the audiobook and I've got the audiobook on my smartphone, the Kindle and the Audible audiobook, because they're integrated and they bounce back and forth, you can like synchronize them. That means I can listen to the audiobook in the car and then I can open up the Kindle and it'll say, well, we're at this point. Do you want to start reading from there? That means I can just bounce back and forth. And that meant cool. I could spend a couple of hours out, driving from place to place for my work and then come home and read some. And then the next day, drive some more. That's how I finished the book. Mm-hmm. So for the extra, it was $2. It was $1.99 for the extra, for the audio. That's how I finished this book. So this is the first time I actually used that feature. And I've gotten the audiobooks and I have listened to the audiobooks, but I've never actually used that feature before. And I gotta say, it is really, really awesome. I don't know how many other people can use that feature quite the same way I've done it, but if you can, it's the way to go.
Yeah, it sounds really cool.
So that is the way to go. You totally got to do this. It's pretty cool. There's 2 remaining things that I think that I wanted to talk about. Number 1 is that there really isn't like an antagonist in this book that's like a human. It's like not a person that's an antagonist. The antagonist is really Mother Nature.
It's the world.
It's the world. The world will kill you.
Yes.
So yeah, it's survival. It's like it's like Mother Nature. It's like survival on Everest. It's like one of those stories. So if you're looking for like guns blazing, fighting against aliens, if you keep looking for that to come around the corner, that's not what's happening here. It's like these people, there's some conflict between other human beings, but the reality of it is it's survival against all odds against Mother Nature.
It's a survival story. It's a very good survival story.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I didn't like was you would change point of views an awful lot, and you would not know who you were suddenly as at that point.
And in the way that happens in military stories, everybody has a couple of names.
Mm-hmm.
And, first name, last name, and acronyms happen.
Oh, yeah.
And as those point of views shift, it's difficult to tell sometimes. And I really think it's probably not Michael Z. Williamson's fault that nobody put those little triple dot marks that you usually get between point of view shifts.
Yeah, that would have been handy.
Yeah, really would have been handy if it would have been like ... Okay, now, we've changed over to Sergeant, so-and-so's point of view. That would have been helpful.
Yeah.
But, you'll see that happen. You'll just get used to it. After a little while, you just, okay, whatever.
Yeah, after a little while, it's not too bad. But in the beginning, you're just, wait, who is this? What's going on?
Yeah.
But you figured it out after a while.
But yeah, I really liked it enough to make it through what was literally like 22 hours worth of audio length. It was, honest to God, it was Harry Potter length book. It was a big book.
It was a big book. But I like big books. And
you cannot lie. Couldn't let that pass.
No, I know.
The past is so completely alien.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he deserves a lot of credit for going in a completely different place, in a completely different direction, and showing us exactly how alien the past really truly is.
Yeah, it was definitely eye-opening. There are things that you just don't think about. You don't think about the fact that agriculture has come as far as it has, and you don't think about any of these things. You take a lot of stuff for granted.
That's true.
Yeah.
The book is A Long Time Until Now by Michael Z. Williamson. It's $7. It's available at Amazon, and the link is in the show notes. And don't forget, for an extra $2, you can pick it up on Audible and listen to it in the car. The Wrong Fun podcast runs entirely on your donations. We count on you to donate or subscribe to cover our server costs, our book, and our equipment expenses. Making a podcast is a lot of fun, but it's not cheap. Please consider making a donation or subscribing. Go to wrongfun.com and click on the PayPal link. You can make a one-time donation of any amount or subscribe for as little as $2 a month. That doesn't sound like much, but we pay server costs monthly. It's a tiny amount from you, but a giant help from us.
Thanks for joining us on this voyage. Music is courtesy of Simplify Recordings.
Send your feedback, both good and great, to feedback@wrongfun.com.
Show notes can be found at wrongfun.com/episode 6.
The captain has locked onto the station and turned off the fasten safety restraint sign, and you are free to move about the cabin. We hope you've enjoyed your journey with us on the Wrong Fun podcast. Don't forget to like and share the Wrong Fun podcast on Facebook. And if you've booked your travel today through iTunes, make sure to leave us a glowing 5-star review. And remember, this show is powered entirely by your donations. See our website at wrongfun.com for details.
This is a URS production.
Random noise.